Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's talk about forgiveness and spirituality by Barbara. And she, as you all know, she is the president of the Theosophical Society of America, and she's coming from Corona today. So thank you for taking the time away from her Saturday to join us. So without further ado, I will turn the floor over to her. Go ahead, Barbara.
Thank you so much. And it is such a joy and a privilege and an honor to be here with you all today. I recognize the lodge. I was literally at the lodge some years ago. And so the opportunity to at least be here with you via Zoom and hopefully one day in person again. Shanti, that was the most beautiful meditation I have heard in a very long time. And so I'm going to do a quick aside here and ask that you would consider writing it in terms of a brief article, just a little, and submitting it to the Quest, not as a meditation, but your thoughts and the direction were just so wonderful. So just something to consider. I'm always on the lookout for people to, share their perspectives. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I am going to share my screen. I did create a PowerPoint for us, mostly because I think it's helpful, but also because it puts me in the corner so I don't have to see myself, which makes me very happy. So can you see my screen? And is it working the way it should?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure. So we know from our theosophical studies that we are complex beings with both a personality that is limited to this one lifetime and a higher consciousness that transcends the personality and yet incorporates its lessons for its ongoing evolutionary journey. So does struggling with forgiveness make us less spiritual? No. In fact, it makes us human. Almost everything about forgiveness is focused on the personality aspect of ourselves. It is our personality who is hurt or feels betrayed or abandoned or whatever. Our higher self does not experience these things, even though
Is it our internet? Hello?
okay. It is through the personality that we live and have experiences. And these experiences are what allow us to expand our consciousness and our awareness. Sometimes the experiences we have on this physical plane of existence include interactions with others, which may result in feeling slighted or betrayed or hurt. It is almost inevitable. Sometimes the hurt seems to touch the deepest part within our personalities. When this happens, we may experience feelings of anger, bitterness, resentment, frustration. We may hold a grudge. We may cut off contact with the individual who has hurt us. We may even feel hate toward that person. Well, I'm sure most of you have heard it said that holding on to anger or resentment or bitterness or hatred or whatever that is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The idea of forgiving someone who has hurt us so deeply can feel abhorrent. And we may at times think that there's no possible way that we can forgive another person. But remaining in that state is unhealthy. It's unhealthy physically, it's unhealthy psychologically, and it's unhealthy spiritually. So this morning, we're going to briefly discuss the physical and psychological aspects of forgiveness. But then we're going to go into much more detail and, more importantly, explore the spiritual component of forgiveness. But before we go there, let's talk a little bit about what forgiveness means. Like most words, it can mean different things to different people. So we all may wish to consider what it means to us. Well, let's see if I can make this slide go. So I went too far. Let's see if I can go backwards. No, it is going forward. Sorry, my apologies. I brought my little computer with me. I didn't bring my big work computer with me, my big laptop, because it's heavier. And so I don't work this one as well. My apologies. So the dictionary definition of forgiveness, if we look it up in the dictionary, we find that it means to cease to feel resentment against an offender, to give up resentment of something, or a claim to requital for something like an insult. My forgiveness, after working for many years as a mental health provider with people who have experienced hurt, deep hurt, from my perspective, forgiveness does not mean acceptance of the behavior, or forgetting the behavior, or excusing the behavior that caused the hurt. That all happened. I mean, it's not going away, but it does mean letting go of those feelings that are impacting us. They're not impacting the other person truly. They're really impacting us. So the easiest part of this discussion, of course, is about the physical component, the physical health benefits of forgiveness. So let's just look at this kind of briefly. So from the hopkinsmedicine.org website, I found that studies have shown that the act of forgiveness can heap huge rewards for our health. Lowering the risk of heart attack, improving cholesterol levels and sleep, and reducing pain, blood pressure, and levels of anxiety, depression, and stress. And research, according to them, points to an increase in the forgiveness health connection as we age. Psychologically speaking, working on forgiveness can help us increase our self-esteem, give us a sense of inner strength and safety. It can reverse the lies that we often tell ourselves. We don't stop and think about that very often. But the lies that we tell ourselves when someone's hurt us deeply, lies like, I'm defeated, or I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I'm
Cannot hear you, Barbara.
Although when we talk about the spiritual component, we'll see how it makes a difference to all of humanity. Once again, studies have shown that forgiving others produce strong psychological benefits for the one who forgives. It's been shown to decrease depression, anxiety, unhealthy anger, and the symptoms of PTSD. So clearly, both the physical and psychological impacts of forgiveness are important, especially in relation to this particular life that we're living, the one that we're existing in now. If we examine the concept of forgiveness and its impact beyond this current lifetime and at a spiritual level, we have to talk about karma. Well, karma has been called many things, and these are some of those. Before the introduction of the Theosophical Society in 1875, very few people in the Western part of the world had ever heard the word karma. And it's likely that even fewer had an understanding of its meaning. In the past 145 plus years, much has changed. Most individuals living in the West have heard the term, and many have some basic understanding of it. We find memes and cartoons regarding karma, including references to instant karma. We hear it referred to in these various terms, and others as well. Numerous books, articles, talks, videos about karma can be found in both the East and the West. They can be found from spiritual perspectives to pragmatic ones, from shallow perspectives to in-depth perspectives. A great deal has been said about karma in these intervening years. However, not everyone is in agreement. Therefore, it's probably useful for us to do our own exploration of this particular concept, in alignment, of course, with the theosophical teachings of doing our own study and finding those concepts that resonate with that deepest component of ourselves. So here are a few statements about karma with which many esotericists and theosophists would agree. It's a universal principle that is inherent in the universe. It is impersonal, and inexorable. Every action has a reaction. And karma is inextricably linked to reincarnation. In all honesty, I'm not sure that we have much more of an understanding of karma than those few points listed. We frequently talk about karma, or people talk about karma, as if we understand it in more depth. But do we? We're reminded of the words of the Mahatma K.H. to A.P. Sennett in letter number 26, that's in the chronological series, when he writes, "You know nothing of the ins and outs of the work of karma." And later in this same letter, he writes, "Have another look at karma and remember that it ever works in the most unexpected ways." Something to consider. Along these same lines, Mabel Collins, in her essay on karma in the back of the book, Light on the Path, writes, "Until the disciple has reached the point at which they no longer affect him, that is, the operations of karma." I'm sorry, I missed a sentence. Let me say that sentence again. So along these same lines, Mabel Collins tells us in her essay on karma that can be found in the back of the book, Light on the Path. She tells us that the operations of karma cannot be fully understood, quote, until the disciple has reached the point at which they no longer affect him or her. Thus, we recognize that it is not possible to grasp the entire concept at this point in our spiritual evolution. However, if we contemplate this concept deeply, spending time in self-introspection, listening to the still voice within, we may gain some small intuitive glimpse of the workings of karma. Even without a thorough understanding of the understanding of karma, we can use the 4 statements that we mentioned a few minutes ago to help us in our daily lives. These assertions provide us with a direct understanding as we consider karma and forgiveness. So, the first assertion, karma is an inherent principle in the universe. The implications that come from that are that there is a cosmic intelligence. There is order in the universe. There's this cosmic intelligence that is sort of behind everything. As you guys are studying the secret doctrine, and HPB talks about that in the 3 fundamental propositions in the secret doctrine. It implies that the universe is not random or chaotic. Things don't just happen. There is always a reason, a cause, an effect. Karma is a law, very much in the way we think about gravity. It just is. Karma is neither good nor bad. It just is. Karma is impersonable. I did it again. Karma is impersonal and inexorable. So is gravity. Gravity is also impersonal and inexorable. It doesn't just say, oh, I'm going to make that person fall down, but not that person. No. When we trip, we fall down. It just happens. Now, when we hear the terms impersonal and inexorable, they can sound a bit ominous, I think. Gravity is the same way, but we don't find gravity ominous. It's just a part of our daily life. So recognizing that karma is not a bad thing. It's not ominous. It's not out to get us, as so much of the current cartoons or memes or other things imply. It's just a law. And it is there, and it is part of the structure of this universe. In light of the third assertion, for every action there is a reaction, we can think a little bit about the words of HPB in The Key to Theosophy. She writes, karma is the unerring law which adjusts effect to cause on the physical, mental, and spiritual planes of being. As no cause remains without its due effect from greatest to least, from a cosmic disturbance down to the movement of your hand. And as like produces like, karma is that unseen and unknown law which adjusts wisely, intelligently, and equitably each effect to its cause, tracing the latter back to its producer. I think that's something to really contemplate in detail. It's, as of course, as always with HPV, she puts a great deal into every sentence, and spending time in contemplation of them, I think, is almost always helpful to us. She also tells us that karma is the law of universal harmony. And she uses the metaphor of a tree, which is why the picture of the tree and the bird just looked very pretty. She describes it saying that when the wave of energy, a vibration, each of which then has a rebounding effect. This is the way in which the universe maintains equilibrium. For every cause, there will be an effect. The fourth statement, karma is inextricably linked to reincarnation. This takes us into a little bit different arena, but just as important, and again, in the realm of our conversation about forgiveness and spirituality. Theosophical literature talks about the spiritual evolution of the soul. It tells us that through a series of incarnations, we continue to learn and grow spiritually until that point in time when we become totally human. We're not total humans yet. We are humans, but I'm not in control of this human vehicle that I'm currently inhabiting. I still don't control my thoughts always. I don't always control my words or my actions or my feelings. Working on it, but I don't have complete control. I am not fully human. John Algeo, former president of the TSA, writes, "The purpose of our many lives is to further the evolutionary development of our minds and souls." So we are each expanding our consciousness as we live each life, with the goal being to further this evolutionary development, to become fully human, and in doing so, recognize the unity of all beings. This, I think, is a little bit reminiscent of Ashanti's beautiful meditation at the beginning. One of the ways in which we expand our consciousness involves a variety of human experiences, some of which entail a degree of pain or disruption. We can interpret these experiences karmically. Not only does karma balance and restore equilibrium and harmony, but in doing so, it provides us with the opportunity for growth, for expanding our consciousness. If we look back at our life, if I look back at my life, I think, when have I learned and grown the most? Inevitably, the answer for me anyway, and I'm guessing probably for you, involves the passage through a very difficult time, frequently a time of loss or tragedy or hurt. Blavatsky put this concept in a different way in her pamphlet, Reincarnation and Karma. This is part 1 of that pamphlet. I found it on the Theosophy World website. So if you're ever interested in exploring other resources, in addition to, and I guess I'm doing a commercial here, in addition to theosophy.wiki on the TSA's website, there is also a website called Theosophy World, and it's maintained in New Zealand, and there's tremendous amount of resources there. And that's where I found this pamphlet. Anyway, back to the talk. HPB talks about this growth within us, saying the inner being must continually burst through its confining shell or encasement. And such a disruption must also be accompanied by pain. Not physical, but mental and intellectual. The trouble that comes upon us is always just the one we feel to be the hardest that could possibly happen. It is always the one thing we feel we cannot possibly bear. If we look at it from a wider point of view, we shall see that we are trying to burst through our shell at its one vulnerable point. Our growth, she says, to be real growth, must progress evenly throughout. Just as the body of a child grows, not first the head and then a hand, followed perhaps by a leg, but in all directions at once, regularly and imperceptibly. Humanity's tendency is to cultivate each part separately, neglecting the others in the meantime. Every crushing pain, she says, is caused by the expansion of some neglected part, which expansion is rendered more difficult by the effects of the cultivation bestowed elsewhere. So if I am hurt by, if I'm feeling abandoned, for instance, it's because somewhere inside of me, there's a part that needs to be strengthened so that I recognize that I can never be abandoned from a spiritual perspective. I am never alone. We are all one together. But the pain of abandonment, the working through of that process is so painful. And for many, it's possibly the worst that they could imagine. If we think of karma as a universal law that seeks to balance all in the universe, and in doing so, provides us with the opportunity for growth and expansion of consciousness, our perception of it may change. This is in itself a moment of expanding consciousness. So really, and I hit the slide button too soon, but it doesn't matter. So what does all this have to do with forgiveness? We've been talking about the complexity of ourselves as beings. We've talked about health benefits of forgiveness physically and psychologically. We've talked about karma. But what does all of this have to do with our topic of forgiveness? Well, there's so many components to this discussion. Beings. Being angry with another person is the same thing as being angry with ourselves. And being angry with ourselves is the same thing as being angry with everyone else. Putting the idea of forgiveness and the concept of unity together, we are strongly encouraged, if not compelled, to move in the direction of forgiveness. We forgive because it is best for humanity as a whole. That is our ultimate calling, isn't it? To work for the benefit of humanity, the unity that we know exists. Mabel Collins, again from her essay on karma, says, desire to sow no seed for your own harvesting. Desire only to sow that seed, the fruit of which shall feed the world. Something else to consider when we look at the spiritual components of forgiveness are the thoughts, feelings, and actions experienced when we are hurt by someone else. Excuse me. Earlier, we talked about the fact that when we don't forgive another person, we hold on to those feelings. We hold on to that anger, hurt, bitterness, resentment, whatever that is. These feelings and the thoughts that just go with them, because our feelings and the thoughts in our lower mind are very much connected, the kama manas, they surround us. They surround us. Stronger they are, the bigger they become, even though we don't see them. They exist. They're there. They impact us, and they impact those around us. And ultimately, they impact the entire mental field of consciousness. The Mahatma K.H. wrote to A.P. Sennett, and this is in letter 18 of the chronological series. Thoughts are things, have tenacity, coherence, and life. They are real entities. We find additional comments on this concept in another of the Mahatma letters, where it said, every thought of an individual, and I'm adding in thoughts and feelings because they really truly do go together in the kama manas. Every thought upon being evolved passes into the inner world and becomes an active entity by associating itself, coalescing, we might term it, with an elemental, that is to say, with one of the semi-intelligent forces of the kingdom. It survives as an active intelligence, a creature of the mind's begetting for a longer or shorter period, proportionate with the original intention or intensity of the cerebral action which generated it. Thus, a good thought is perpetuated as an active, beneficent power. An evil one as a maleficent power. And so, an individual is continually peopling his current in space with a world of his own, crowded with the offsprings of his fancies, desires, impulses, and passions. In other words, we are peopling our world, the area around us, and rippling out, sorry, our anger, our resentment, our bitterness, whatever, the stronger and more intentional the feelings and thoughts are, the stronger they are. These thought forms, these vibrations that ripple out, and the longer they last. I'm sure you know people, I know people who have held on to a grudge, a bitterness, a resentment for years upon years. What has that done to their world? And then we think about the karmic implications of sending out these vibrations. When we send them out, when they radiate from us, I don't know that we're consciously, purposely sending them out, but they radiate from us. They attract similar vibrations because energy that vibrates at the same rate is attracted to itself. And we add that to the consciousness of humanity. We also know that this energy that is rippling out will return to us because every action, every cause has an effect and they rebound upon us. The karmic implications are vast because we're not affecting only ourselves, but those who are around us, our family, our co-workers, our colleagues, our other Theosophical family. But we're impacting the entire mental plane field of consciousness. On the other hand, forgiving. Now, remember, not excusing or forgetting hurtful behaviors, but rather by recognizing that we are responsible for our own responses and letting go of the feelings that bind us to the hurt. By recognizing this and letting go, we will begin to heal those hurts in this physical life. Added to that, if we recognize that each of us is on our own evolutionary spiritual journey, designed so that we learn and grow, we will perhaps experience a different perspective of the situation. We may even find that we feel compassion or empathy for the individual who hurt us. Again, not forgetting, not excusing the behavior. It exists. It happened. It's a cause. And we know karmically that causes have their effects that rebound. We may recognize that the person who hurt us still needs to learn. Perhaps needs to learn how not to hurt others in the way that they've hurt us. If and when we do this, and I know we can do it, we are peopling our world, to use the words of the Mahatma, with vibrations of compassion, understanding, and unity. And these vibrations, as we know, once again radiate to the people around us and onto the mental field of consciousness. And we all know that our world today needs to be filled with compassion, with understanding and unity. Additionally, we seem to be freeing ourselves and the other person from being tied together. We have released that attachment, moving into the area of equilibrium and harmony. As we've said, all of the vibrations will rebound upon us, just as the vibrations of others rebound on them. If we look, somehow, I missed a slide. Oh well. If we look at the assertion that karma is a law of the universe, impersonal and inexorable, we know that we, along with others, will be faced with the opportunity to learn and grow. There is no need for us to hold on to feelings that are divisive. There's no need for us to seek revenge or retaliation, knowing that we will learn from our choices in a way that most effectively provides us with the opportunity for the greatest possible growth. It is important that we don't perceive karma as a means of revenge. However, it is equally important that we realize that we are physical manifestation. It does have repercussions in the spiritual world, as do all of our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Karma plays an integral role when we decide to forgive or not forgive another person. We are choosing how we will move forward when we are hurt, even from the most egregious hurts. We are choosing whether we will respond intentionally with forgiveness or react from a personality-based perspective and hold on to feelings that are divisive. As Claude Bragdon writes, karma is the restoration of a primordial equilibrium disturbed by the action of personal free will. We are truly the creators of our own destiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be with you for a while. I'm very grateful. Certainly, if it's appropriate, I'm open to questions or I have no answers, but I'm certainly I have lots of opinions, but I'm certainly open to comments or thoughts or so. It's back to you, Tret. Whatever you guys wish.
Okay, let me go ahead and start now with the first question. You give the definition for forgiving is letting go. Is that the same as detaching ourselves from these emotion and feeling?
So the answer to that question is yes and no. Isn't that a good answer for a Theosophist? No definitive answer, right? So we have feelings, my perspective, okay, again, this is, I don't have the answers, y'all, I won't in this lifetime, eventually maybe, but my perspective is that we have feelings for a reason in this physical manifestation. If we didn't have them, if we didn't need them, if there wasn't a reason,
Oh, we lost the audio.
to control.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Barbara, you were cutting out, your Wi-Fi cut out a little bit there. I don't know if you can. Well,
I'll start.
So.
Absolutely, and I'm very sorry about that. So I believe with all of my heart that we have feelings for a reason in this physical manifestation. And I think that our job here is to learn how to deal with those feelings, not to push them away. We don't ever want to push them away, because all that happens is that they're going to come back and they're going to explode like a volcano when we least expect it. So when we have any feelings, recognizing them, honoring that we've been given this opportunity to have feelings, but also to understand where they're coming from and to work our way through them. That, I think, is how we let go of them. So instead of the word detach, and again, words mean different things to different people. To me, detach means to push away or to ignore. That we recognize them, we work through them, and as we work through them, we begin to let go of them. They begin to have less and less impact on us. And, I don't think this happens in an hour or a day or a week. It's the process. And it's a process. All of human life is a process. And so, but if we know, and we do know, and now we can't unknow, we have this responsibility, I think, to work with our feelings and to work through them. And this is how we learn to control them. And the next time something happens to hurt us in a similar way, we are less likely to be so hurt, and our feelings are less likely to be so strong. And anyway, so that would be my perspective.
Thank you, Barbara. It was so,
Yes, that was very helpful. I originally thought that detaching ourselves from the emotion of feeling is the definition that you were looking for, but you clarified that. Thank you very much. And I think you emphasize on the fact that we shouldn't ignore or push away these emotional feeling. To me, that go back to what the Buddha was saying. The cause of all suffering is based on ignorance, and we are given these emotion and feeling for a reason, and that reason is like the example I use is like a fire alarm. Like a smoke detector in your house, right? They're there for a reason, and if the smoke detector come off, right, and we keep ignoring them and pushing it away and just turn it off, right, because it's so loud and bothering us, that is not a good sign, right? When these sensors are telling us something's happening in the environment and we choose to ignore them, I don't think that's a good way to live also.
I agree. And if I could add on a little bit. So I mentioned several different kinds of feelings. I talked about hurt. I talked about anger. So psychologically speaking, when we are angry, anger is what is frequently referred to as a secondary emotion. It actually is covering up something. So when we feel angry, it is important to look at that and pull away the anger and look at what is underneath. So for example, when we feel, I don't know, I'll go back to the words I used, hurt, abandoned, betrayed, whatever, we feel vulnerable. Those feelings make us want to hide in the closet or under the bed. And we can't do anything when we're there. So as human beings, what we do is we put anger on top of that, because anger is a defensive emotion. It makes us want to stand up and say, oh, no, you can't do that to me. Okay. So again, we don't want to revel in that anger. Okay. But to stop and look at the anger and say, what's underneath that? What am I really feeling? Am I feeling like I'm not important? Am I feeling like I'm not valuable, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable? And a lot of times it goes to those deepest components of us. And that's where the work is. And that's where the spiritual work is. When we can go back to our spiritual teachings and recognize that we are all of those things: lovable, valuable, worthwhile, and connected. So anyway, thank you for letting me add on to that.
Yeah, I think the anger itself is, you have to go through that process of listening. I guess one of the cause for the anger is the other person not listening to you, I guess. So I find myself frequently in that position because my wife would be angry at me, and then this is a typical thing, and I'm not a good person to communicate in some of those things, and oftentimes you have to raise a voice before I actually listen. So that's some feedback.
So, Barbara, I have just a question. Maybe you can provide some insight. In the Lord's Prayer, it says, "Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us." And for most Christians, forgive us our trespass means God, right? Can you share some light from the Theosophical point of view about that, that part of the prayers?
Yes, yes. And John, it's so good to see you after so many years.
You too.
So I think that there are a couple of things to look at in that. One is that the translation into English has gone through several iterations in various languages. And I have seen, but I cannot recall at this moment where or what it said, but a direct translation from the original, maybe Aramaic, or whatever the original language was. And it is similar, but not like what is frequently used within the Christian religion. But using the one that we have from the Christian religion, I agree, it's a prayer to God. And of course, we all have our different perceptions, but as it says in the Secret Doctrine, there is no anthropomorphic deity there who's deciding things for us. There is the all, well, she says, right, that we can't even name it. We can't even conceive of it. It's the all. And so prayer to the all, of course, is useless, I think, because it's not going to do something for us. Prayer is asking for something. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us, is again asking for something. If we look at the spiritual concept that we are all part of that all, we are rays of that divine unity. I think I love the metaphor of the white light of the all. And I know this is so simplified, but it makes sense in my brain, which probably is pretty simplified too. The white light of the all shining through a prism into the spectrum of colors. And that's what we are. We are that white light, even though we look separate and, look different. So are we really asking ourselves then to forgive ourselves? Not one of us is without having stepped on the toes, so to speak, having hurt in others. Hopefully not intentionally, although I'm guessing that in past lives we did intentionally, and that's how we learned not to. But can we forgive ourselves for being human? Can we forgive ourselves for the mistakes that we've made in this lifetime and move forward? And can we then forgive other people for the mistakes they make in this lifetime and move forward? That would kind of be an interpretation for me. Self-forgiveness is so essential. We're probably much harder on ourselves, I think, as Theosophists than many others. So recognizing, I don't know about you, but I can look back and think, oh, why did I do that? Why did I say that? Why did I think that? And then to say, if you learned from it, Barbara, if you get better from it, then it's growth. And that's part of this experience. So I'm not sure if that sheds the light that you were looking for, John, but.
Well, thank you for your insight. We are all part of the all, and as we forgive all the all from our limitations, the all also forgive us of our limitations.
Yes. And is expecting us to learn and grow from them. That's why we're here. So.
Thank you. Santi and Jamshed had their hand up. I don't know which one will go first. So, Santi, you want to go first, or Jamshed, you want to go first?
It's okay. I can go. First of all, thank you, Barbara, for the wonderful talk. Every single word resonated with me. Looking back at my personal journey and the inner work, I can say how forgiveness is part of the healing process. We have to start with forgiveness. And emotions, if we accept, we are emotional human beings, and that's who we are. But to have a curious mind, so to answer that question is not to shove it down and not look at it or put it away. When you say, I don't want to look at it, it's when we're shoving it down, that's when it's going to explode. But when something happens and that doesn't make us feel comfortable, to have a curious mind, that's the biggest mind. Okay, what's going on? Why am I feeling this way? And from my personal experience, whether it's anger or anger especially, when you take away the anger, it all boils down to love. Love, love, love. And it's self-love is the first love. We have gone away. I mean, if you look at society and what's happening, and if you boil down to it, most of them have not been loved as a child or the inner child. It's all, and learning how to love yourself. And love yourself is not the physical love where you go and beautify yourself. And no, everything that we seek are already within us. And how to bring that out. And the reason it resonates with me is because of the work that I do. I integrate ancient wisdom with modern psychology. So we can neutralize those intense emotions very easily in a pain-free way. It doesn't have to take a lot, that we can do this. And that's how I transformed myself. And going back to the embryo, I mean, when we are in the embryonic stage, we forget that the heart was the first thing that, even before the brain was developed, it's the heart that's developed. And that's why in my work, I try to bring people to their heart, back to their heart. The heart has brain cells, and the heart receives information even before the brain does. So, and through my journey, I've created, my mission is to heal how you can heal your heart, heal your heart, healing one heart at a time to heal the heart of the nation. No heart left behind. Because as we heal ourselves, it all starts here, because we have heard the terminology, hurt people hurt others. Why are people out there hurting each other and shooting each other? Because they themselves are hurt inside. And when you are hurt, you are not a very nice person to be with. I know that myself, and some of you have known through my journey. Yeah, you don't want to be seen, you just want to be hidden. But as you transform and then you can help others who are in a similar situation. So thank you so much for bringing that to light.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and perspectives and deepening that. So I'm grateful. Thank you. Jamshed?
Yeah, Barbara, thank you very much. I've been waiting for a presentation like this for a long time, because I've been struggling with forgiveness. And between your last responses and the presentation itself, you've probably answered what I'm going to ask you, but I need to ask you again anyway, so please bear with me. If a person insults you once, then forgiveness is possible, understandable. But how does one handle a person who constantly insults you, a person one cannot avoid in life? I have no desire to insult them right back. So should I just resign myself and say it's my karma? I'm glad you stated that struggling with forgiveness does not make us less of a human being. So how should I handle this? A constant from the same person.
I'm so sorry that's happening to you. So I actually am probably going to answer your question with a question, which is probably not what you want. But when we're in situations that we cannot avoid and that are hurtful consistently, which is what I think I'm hearing you say,
Yes.
then my question to myself would be, what am I supposed to learn? What is this supposed to teach me? And listen to that voice from within. Because we have, as Ashanti just said, we have our answers. They're all inside of us. And the answer for you will be very different than the answer for me, because we're learning different things. We have our own paths. And so if we are faced with something very consistently, or even if we find ourselves in the same situation every 10 or 15 years, what are we supposed to learn from that? There's obviously some reason that we keep getting bumped by this obstacle in our path. And so there's a reason, from my perspective, there's a reason and a lesson there, and learning to get over it. And again, not something that happens quickly. But we're here to learn and grow. And so, yeah. I had it like, well, if you do this and this and this, then it'll all be better. But there is no this, and this.
Okay. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Can I ask something? According to I guess from the Christian tradition, we are supposed to pray for those who hurt us. And I found that if you do that, some of these hurtful feelings basically disappear from our lives.
Yes. I'm going to add on to that, John, that, and I see Shanti wants to say something as well. Dora Kuntz used to say that if you can't send another person good thoughts or good wishes, or, you know, essentially praying for them, but in different terms, send them white light.
Mhm.
Surround them with white light, because obviously they are struggling with something
Mhm.
that we have no idea what it is, but we know that white light is always helpful. And I would also personally try to recognize that for whatever reason that person is insulting me, I don't have to accept their insults. It's their stuff. It's their discomfort with something, their hurt, their pain. It's not mine unless I allow it. And if I choose not to allow it, and again, this doesn't happen quickly or easily, then it no longer gets into me. So this is, y'all, this is the work, what we're talking about here, work of lifetimes.
Mhm.
It's not today or this week, or it's the work of lifetimes, but it is
It's
the work
possible.
that we have to do. Yeah. So go ahead, Shanti, you wanted to add something.
Adding, thank you, Barbara, for that. And I wanted your insight on this, and going back to Jamshed's question, and from my personal experience too, we are so used to, I mean, we have to live in this material world and yet are also in the spiritual world. So we have to learn how to live in balance between the two. So we have been programmed to resolve things in the material world, physically in the material. We confront people, or all of that in this world. But I believe resolution happens at a higher, I mean, if you try to talk to someone who's in conflict with you, it's going to be a constant back and forth, and no one benefits from that. In my personal experience, what I've done, because for 3 years, I didn't have a job. All I did was sit and meditate. I would go into meditation. I would put the people in my meditation that I know I couldn't have a conversation because it's just going to turn into conflict or something. Put them in this bubble of light and just send them love. Oh, and it's work. It's work. It's, no one said it's a free ride. And I did it constantly over and over again to my personal experience. So when I finally, I mean, I think my ex-mother-in-law was on her deathbed, and when she saw me, she said, God bless you, God bless you. I had no idea. What I'm trying to say is the blessings that you put out somehow will come back. And I had no idea she's going to bless me on her deathbed. And getting a blessings from your mother-in-law is the closure that I needed for this relationship. There's no way I could have talked about it. There's no way I could have orchestrated this in this physical world. It materialized from a higher level into being. So what we need to do is start living in a different way. Start living from the inside out rather than trying to figure things out from the outside in. Because that we already know doesn't work. We're just knocking ourselves against this brick wall. Go back. And you know what I do? Sometimes, I mean, as Theosophists, we meditate anyway. When we meditate, we're already going to this high level of consciousness. Go there, have a conversation at that level, soul level conversations with that person. Continually have that conversation at that level. And allow it to materialize in the divine right time, the divine right place, in the divine right time.
Thank you, Shanti. Alfredo, I see your hands up, but Jesse in the Houston lot actually have a question, so I'm going to let him go first if you don't mind. You okay?
Can everybody hear me?
Okay.
Okay. It's more of an observation. I learned here in one of the lectures that karma has a root in the intention. So, or the cause of your action is the intention, and if your intention comes out of anger, then that's where you sort of put the little mark on karma there. So I'm just trying to connect it all. Karma and forgiveness. Forgiveness is the opposite of acting out of anger. You're stopping yourself, not acting out of anger, and the forgiveness comes when you do not retaliate, or you're forgiving the person, you're forgiving the act. You're not forgetting, as Barbara said, you're not forgetting what they did, and you're not excusing that, but you're forgiving it. In other words, the only real forgiveness is if you don't do something in retaliation. And then on the other side of that same coin, the forgiveness coin, is when you do act or react out of anger against someone else, then to seek that forgiveness is sort of to mend that karma, or mend some karma in your past. So with what John said about the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. There's that coin, the one side, you're asking the Supreme Being to forgive us as we forgive. And so the asking for forgiveness is the important. And I'm sorry, I'm confusing it a little bit, but what I'm trying to get at is its connection to karma. Asking for forgiveness, or seeking forgiveness, not absolution. That means you can erase whatever you did, but seeking that forgiveness is the other side of the coin. When you do something wrong, when you act out of anger or fear, or me, I get angry a lot when I experience a loss of control, whether it's someone cutting me off in traffic, or dropping a glass on the floor and it breaking, and I get upset. What do you do? I tend to yell and scream and react to something, or used to anyway. I'm trying not to do that anymore, but you can't say forgiveness to that glass, or forgiveness to the person who cut you off in the road. I guess you can forgive them, but not directly. So to not react, that's forgiveness. That's just an observation, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Alfredo?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I have a comment, more than a question, really. And this is just based on what everybody's talking about here. And we also have to think about, I guess, what the lowest common denominator is. Because we have different levels of tolerance. You might be speaking to a group, right? And only one person might be offended by a comment you make. And that's because we have different cultural backgrounds, or emotional baggage, right? And some people might say, well, that wasn't offensive at all. But one person might say, that was very offensive to me, and I need to forgive you, So we have to consider different cultural backgrounds, gender, all kinds of things. That's not easy to do, to navigate all that.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Follow this, yeah.
Yeah. You never want to hurt someone else, and it's hard sometimes not to because we don't intentionally do it, but thank you.
Shed, you had a question?
No, I don't have one.
So far, look like everyone online except for T and Elena. Do you have any feedback, comments?
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Well, listening to everybody talking, I have at the very end, I have something come up. Why do we, all of us, so eagerly looking for happy or easily and eagerly anger, unhappy, emotional all the time? What is the root cause of all of that? Either on happy side or the unhappy side. Why are we constantly bounded by those two directions?
Ooh.
Love.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
all love.
I would agree with love, and I would also say with attachment, expectations. And I think also sometimes, we just tune into the vibrations around us. And sometimes, which is part of the reason why we meditate and we work hard on this spiritual path to purify our vibrations as much as possible. So we're vibrating at a bit of a higher level. I hate to use words higher and lower because that implies stuff that I don't mean. But that we're vibrating at a frequency that attracts similar spiritual feelings, thoughts, whatever, as opposed to the things that we really don't want to feel. I don't want to feel angry or unhappy. Well, unhappy doesn't worry me. But I don't want to feel angry or things that don't help the world. I want to feel those unitive feelings and stay in them and with unitive thoughts as much as possible, which is always a struggle. I mean, we all get cut off in traffic, as we're saying, but that's why we study theosophy. What is the root cause? And so I think the root cause is love and not love, and love in the highest sense of the word love, universal love. Because when we have that, we are accepting of all other beings and their journeys. Just a thought.
I'm sorry, Sweet, I got disconnected as I tried to answer. This is Elena.
Yeah, go ahead, Elena.
Well, I have a friend who has almost opposite views from me, but I still like her and she likes me. We try to coexist, and we agreed not to talk politics. But now she started talking politics again, or at least texting it to me. So I'm working on this forgiveness. It's really hard.
Yeah, it is.
I want to stay friends.
This is not an easy path we've chosen.
So Barbara, so go ahead.
I was just gonna say, but we have chosen it. So go ahead.
One thing you touched on is thoughts, right? Thoughts are things. So how do we go and do that inner work? So thoughts also elicit emotions. So going back to the root would be, what are the thoughts that are and we talk about unity, then let's think about the thoughts that come through us that are not in alignment with unity. What are the thoughts that are creating the separation and the lack and everything? So how do we come back into alignment? So we have to catch our thoughts at that moment. What is causing us to, what is the thought that's causing us to feel hurt? What is the thought that's causing us to feel anger? And how do we come back to alignment and close that gap? And how do we, so like all of that is work. And to catch that thought, for me, is to catch that thought, we all have a go-to emotion. So go-to emotion is when something doesn't happen the way we expect or we want it. We all like surprises, but we don't like surprises that make us go, don't feel good, right? But then to have a curious mind, what is that thought? For me, my go-to would be frustration. I could read an email, oh my God, not again. Okay, come back, be the observer, take a deep breath, and you have to catch it at that time and not let it sit and fester, because a thought that sits and festers over and over again over time becomes your belief system. And your belief system will create your habitual belief system, and your habitual belief system will create your personality. And so we all know people, I know people, people that their go-to is anger. When some little bit doesn't go their way, it will be anger is their go-to. But then you have to examine yourself. Why is that causing me anger? And you have to work with that yourself. It's not anybody else, because it all starts from here. So having that curious mind.
Thank you.
Thank you, Santi. I'd like to tie that in. Thank you for reminding us about the thoughts. And I'd like to, I guess, comment on what T is asking his question. I think we are naturally inclined to gravitate toward the kama, the kama manas instead of the buddhi manas. It's a lot harder for us to lift ourselves up and trying to gravitate toward the thought at the buddhi manas level. So we have a natural tendency to take the easy way out. And that, I think, is the cause behind all of the issue that they were asking. Whether it's a good feeling that we're looking for, the bad feeling that we're looking for, somebody loves to live in that bad feeling. It's kind of like intoxicating, I guess, in some weird way. But we need to be able to lift ourselves and try to associate ourselves, keep the good thought, the compassion and the sympathy and stuff like that, that would help lift us toward the buddhi manas. And that's the important thing to take away.
Yeah. Thank you. That was great.
Thank you.
I love this. It's more of a discussion than which is a lot better.
Well, that I think cover everyone. Thank you for participating. And is there any other last minute comment or question before we close out?
Just thank you to Shanti for the thought about sending light to people we are angry with. That helps.
Yes. Okay. If there's no other question, let me go ahead and stop the recording.